Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Forgotten Airsoft. I am a man that looks like Ian McCullum from Forgotten Weapons, and I have here today an S&T 98K rifle. This is an Airsoft replica of the Mauser 98K rifles used by the German military during the Second World War. Now, this is not the first time one of these rifles has been made. An original Airsoft manufacturer that came up with the 98 type rifle for use in Airsoft games or as a collector grade replica is a company known as Tanaka. Now, those particular rifles are also gas powered like this one, but they used a detachable magazine that came out with the floor plate. It held 24 rounds, which would be nice for an Airsoft game, and it allowed you to refill the gas and the BBs, all contained inside of that. This particular rifle, the S&T, uses a similar looking 8mm Mauser shell. It is shaped differently in order to accommodate a 6mm BB in the front of it, but you actually physically load the 5 rounds into the internal magazine and then manually eject them through cycling of the bolt. Now this can have some pros and cons associated with it. The pros of it being it's very close to what an actual Mauser operates. The con, of course, is that you only have 5 rounds, and as a result, the gas is moved internally to the bolt rather than a much larger reservoir that could be stored in the magazine. Now, there are other companies that are making K98 replicas now. There are spring types, and there are gas-powered ones as well. For now, let's go over some of the features of this rifle. I'll bring the camera back and we can take a closer look. Alright, first off, let's go over some markings on the rifle. We can see right here we have a BYF with an eagle and a 38. This indicates that normally it would be Mauser Work KG Oberndorf in 1938. However, because this is a replica Airsoft rifle, these markings don't mean absolutely anything. And as you can see, it's all printed onto the receiver. It's not actually roll marked or engraved. On the side, right here, we have where a serial number would normally be as well, along with the eagle, J0001. But again, this serial number does not necessarily correlate with anything because it is a replica firearm. Right back here, you see we have model 98, indicating that it is a 98 style rifle, although this configuration is the 98K with the slightly shorter overall length and barrel. Moving forward on the rifle, where the mount where a ZF41 style scout scope could be attached, we have the actual serial number of this particular rifle. You can see right here we have the actual gun's serial number made by the S&T factory over in China. I believe that these numbers do not correlate with a year of production or anything like that, and since this is a replica of a real Mauser, probably has no meaning whatsoever in the first place. But considering this is modern, we could expect it to be made in the 2000s period, between 2000 and 2009. The S&T 98K Airsoft replica of the Mauser rifle is very similar to a real one in a lot of its aspects. Firstly, it's got a cupped butt plate that comes up part side of the stock and is secured by 2 screws. On the real one, they would be marked with some type of manufacturer's marks and dated. However, this one does not have any markings at all and is secured by Phillips head screws instead of actual flathead screws. Also on the stock, it has a plug for the disassembly of a real Mauser bolt. However, you do not actually have to disassemble the bolt on this one in order to field strip it or properly take care of it. In addition, it also has the slot for the correct Mauser 98 sling. It has this relief, and that occurs on both sides, along with a larger side for the buckle that would normally be associated with that sling. You can also see that the receiver is very similarly built to a Mauser as well. The disassembly arm is located in the same position. Obviously, it still operates as a bolt action, as it should, It still maintains the Mauser style of safety by flipping this lever over to the other side. However, unlike a real Mauser, which has a 3-position safety, this only has a 2-position. So right now it's safe. If I pull the trigger, you can see nothing happens. But if I flip it over to the other side, fires the gun as it should. It's also cut in the top for a stripper clip, despite the fact that Mauser stripper clips do not actually fit correctly in this rifle. You can see here, this is the shell ejecting shells that are part of the rifle. I have them on a Mauser stripper clip here. I can fit the stripper clip into the stripper clip guide, but if I try to feed cartridges, it simply drives the entire clip into the receiver, and now I have to waste time pulling all of these individual cartridges out and pulling the clip out of the stripper clip guide. So while it does not fit regular stripper clips as far as function, they can be used on the actual shell ejecting cartridges themselves. You can see here the bolt is turned over as it would normally be on 98K rifles. The action is actually a cocked on closing action. So if I bring the bolt fully to the rear, push it forward, you can see the striker in the rear here is not properly held back in order to normally be considered a cocked on opening rifle like a real Mauser is. And instead, the last 1/4 inch to 3/8 of an inch, you can see I'm actually cocking the striker before I turn the bolt handle down and lock it into position. All right, you can see when I rotate the bolt up, it exposes the fill valve, which is very similar to a butane lighter, in order to fill the bolt itself with actual compressed gas. Now it works with standard green gas just fine. Would not recommend to use this with anything higher pressure than that, as the seals will generally not hold. However, this particular example is not able to hold gas right now, so I will not be able to get you velocity readings off of any test fires. But you can see the action is very similar. It's got 2 locking lugs at the front here, along with a really large claw type extractor. If we open it up, floor plate, just as you would expect, although it does have the slight slant cut in it to allow a bolt to move forward on an empty magazine, unlike a real military type Mauser, which would actually stay locked open to tell you, hey, I need more ammunition. It's really tough to make out on camera, but you can see the sight is actually graduated all the way out to what would normally be 2,000 meters, although since this is an airsoft gun, you could almost associate that with tens of feet. It does fully work as a tangent sight, rear sight should be. It is a round notch instead of a V notch, however, which is sort of opposite of the front sight, which we'll get to in a minute. However, I wanted to show you that if you flip up the rear sight, you can see wedged here in the spring, this is the hop-up adjustment screw. You place the included Allen key in that screw to be able to adjust the amount of backspin that you get on the BB to allow it to fly straighter. Again, this rear sight is pretty optimistic, and you could measure that as far as tens of feet are concerned. At the front here, you can see a typical barleycorn front sight with a hood, slightly different than what would normally be on the Mauser, in the fact that the rear sight would normally be a V-notch and the front would be a barleycorn. In order to comply with US laws, we have the orange tip that is permanently affixed onto the front of this rifle. A couple of other miscellaneous features about the rifle. You can see it includes a fake cleaning rod mounted underneath the barrel, as would normally be found with a Mauser. And the reason I say fake is if I push out this detent, slide this off, you can see the cleaning rod is incredibly short. And I can rotate that out, and you can see normally the cleaning rod would be sticking out through there, but I can fully rotate this without any consequence. At the same time, it does have a cutout for a bayonet in order to properly mount. However, I do not have a bayonet here to test it with me to see if it actually works. I also want to point out the front sling mount here is made of metal, although it is of questionable metal since this is an airsoft gun and not a real firearm. But I will point out that these stocks and the top here are actually made of ash. While it is not the proper wood that would normally be on a 98 Mauser, it is at least real wood. Alright, now let's disassemble to see how the airsoft replica actually works. It's very similar to the real deal. You have this side hook piece that keeps the bolt in the receiver. If we pull that out, lift the bolt up, cycle it out, and the bolt retracts itself to the rear. You can actually see a close-up here of the sear and it dropping down in order to drop the striker and allow it to fire the rifle. Alright, this is the bolt free from the rifle. You can see the fill valve I had mentioned earlier here, and that the striker totally pivots on its own. You can also see a couple of screws here, which we will get to in a minute. But I wanted to show you the front face of this. You can actually see that this piece right here, what would normally be the claw type extractor on a real Mauser, is actually fake. And in fact, this piece is plastic. And I can actually remove it simply like that. Set that aside. You can actually see there is a recessed front of the bolt face here and an actual claw type extractor coming in from the side that is spring loaded. You can also see the ejector here on the side. I can slide that back and forward with my nail. That is what kicks the empty case out of the gun. Now this is different again from a real Mauser that would have a fixed extractor in the receiver that would fit into this slot and kick out the spent cartridge whenever the gun was cycled. You can actually take one of the shells here. You can see it has an O-ring in the base of it, and that mates to this tapered surface right here, sort of like a cone, and that's what gives it a good gas seal. Whenever a cartridge is loaded, there's a BB normally in the front. You can also see the O-ring for that to retain that. But this is fully sealed here, so that way when a little bit of gas is shot out, it goes through the shell and through the BB in order to propel it down the barrel. And then of course when we extract and eject, you can see the shell hooking off to the side to allow it to fall out of the gun. You can also see a small flathead surface in there. Stick my flathead screwdriver down in there and remove that screw. And what this screw does is this is actually a gas restrictor. Whenever gas is shot through, if it goes through the small hole, it limits the FPS of the actual rifle. You can actually remove this to get more gas flow through a larger orifice in the rifle. Let's go back and partially disassemble it more to find out how the actual mechanism works. As I mentioned earlier, this rifle is a cocked-on closing action instead of a cock-on opening action. And you can kind of see down here that there's no cam track that pulls this striker manually back whenever you tilt the rifle. It simply just allows the bolt to rotate to lock into position. But I'll take the gun apart, take this particular section of it apart, in order to see how that mechanism works. We unscrew this screw right here. As you can see, it's very short, very small. Set that aside so we don't lose it. And then the back half of this actually separates out. You can see there's two springs on here with a bolt head. These two springs, or at least this spring that you can see here, is actually the striker or firing spring. Now there is another spring inside of here that you can see when I push this forward. It does not take much pressure in order to operate this, but this allows the striker assembly to move forward under inertia, let out a little bit of gas, and then the valve that's internal to the bolt pushes it back out, closes off the amount of gas, so that way you can actually get 10 to 15 shots on a single fill of gas, instead of fully closing, dumping all the gas out, and then you have to manually refill the gas reservoir in order to shoot even just a single other projectile. Alright, if we look down inside of the bolt, you can actually see the valve itself that gets depressed whenever the bolt goes home. It's really tough to be able to demonstrate this, but nope, I can't get it pressed in. But you can see the valve is down in the base of that, where all the gas is. Alright, since we actually have some shells here to play around with, I'll go over the firing sequence for this rifle. First, you tilt the bolt up, fill your valve with some compressed green gas in a pre-filled can that's dispensed. Open the bolt all the way open. Take your rounds. Now what I will do here is, since I just have them on a stripper clip, I will partially feed in the clip itself, hold it in place, and then strip the rounds off of it into the magazine. Now you could do this in the middle of an airsoft game, however, it's generally not advised. It's a two-handed process, and then of course you have to find a way to hold onto the rifle. It's almost better to manually load each cartridge in. That being said, you can see we have a true double stack here. Then of course the operation is similar to a real bolt action. Push it forward, you can see the last stroke of the bolt cocks the striker. Rotate it down. Now both the shells are empty and there's no gas in here, so I will pull the trigger. Drops the striker down. Rotate the bolt out. And that first empty shell is ejected out. Repeat the process. Until the magazine is empty. Then you can manually reload all of these shells and start all over again. As far as a practical airsoft weapon or an airsoft replica, in order to use as far as gaming is concerned, the limited 5-shot capacity limits its effectiveness on the field, unlike some sniper rifles which allow for 10, 20, or even 30 shots at a time. You'd be limited by that. In addition, the small gas reservoir does not lend well to cold temperatures, and having to figure out where each one of these shells ejects each and every time you fire can be sort of a pain. And that is why this particular replica fell out of favor with airsofters and reenactors. You could use this for reenacting as a demonstration tool, but these are slightly difficult to come by now since they have now been out of production for quite some time. Alright, I've got a real Yugoslavian-made Mauser right here to demonstrate the cocked-on opening versus cocked-on closing method that the K98K demonstrates. You can see on the real one, if I pick the bolt up, striker is in the lowered position. When I rotate the bolt, I'm extending the striker back. When I do so with the S&T, you can see that does not happen. Cycle both bolts to the rear. Push that forward. You can see this last amount I have to push forward and cam it down. Now the striker is fully cocked, whereas with the real rifle, if I push this down, the striker stays out throughout the entire cycle of the rifle. You can also see, if I do a close-up here on the two receivers, that the ST98K does not have primary extraction. Primary extraction is when you cam the bolt up, it hits up against the back of the receiver and allows you to sort of partially extract a cartridge. And you have significantly more leverage when you rotate it this way than you do trying to yank it back. The S&T doesn't have that problem because we are not fire forming a case whenever we pull the trigger on this gun. So it does not have that built into the receiver. As you can see, the ST98K is a very close representation of the Mauser 98K rifle that was used by Germany. The folks that would be interested in something like this are more than likely those that do World War II airsoft type events where they have to have period correct, or at least appearance-wise, correct looking rifles to use in games or competitions of that fashion, or somebody that may or may not be in a state or country that restricts firearm ownership. Having something like this allows you to show off a very similar type rifle without actually having to go through a very prohibitive process or not any process at all with trying to get a real firearm. If you like this, feel free to like, share, subscribe, and favorite this video. I'm a man that looks like Ian McCullum, and I'll see you next time on Forgotten Airsoft. Ian, I do not know how you put up with all of this hair. It is like 70 some degrees in this apartment that I'm filming in, and I'm absolutely feel like I'm dying of heat stroke underneath this wig. The goatee, I can totally understand. It's totally cool looking. It's really neat. But all this hair up top here, I don't know how you deal with it at all. I'm on the 4th rubber band and hair scrunchie in order to try and maintain your look. Mad respect for you, but man, all this hair is a pain in the butt. All right, guys, if you haven't figured it out, I'm not actually Ian from Forgotten Weapons and In-Range TV. I'm actually Garrett from Gun Gamers, and I wanted to do this parody because I really enjoy Forgotten Weapons and In-Range TV's content. I wanted to do something real similar as far as style and everything. I thought this was a pretty funny idea. I pitched it to the guys. They all thought it was really funny, so I took an old rifle that I had and we did a parody of it. Ian, if you actually get the chance to watch this video, please don't sue us. We really enjoy your content. Myself and a bunch of the guys support you on Patreon. And to our viewers here at Gun Gamers, if you want to check out more cool historic guns, check out Forgotten Weapons and In-Range TV. They do some really interesting and cool stuff there. Ian comes out with a video every single day now thanks to his Patreon, so I definitely recommend supporting his Patreon in order to allow him to continue doing videos. That being said, I'm Garrett from Gun Gamers. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more of the man that looks like Ian McCullum, put a comment down below or let us know on Facebook or down in the YouTube comments. I'm Garrett from Gun Gamers, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching this video from Gun Gamers. We hope you enjoyed watching it as much as we enjoyed making it. If you want to see more content from us, hit that subscribe button, and if you want to help support the channel, be sure to click the link below to buy a patch. Praise Judy.